Oh, howdy all, grab yourself a drink. It is time for some Path of Exile 2 discussion. Patch 0.2.0 can't come fast enough, and today we've finally got some information on when that might be coming. So while the team are working hard on the 0.2.0 content update, which we expect to release in approximately 1 month, we'll be running a series of races in Path of Exile 2 starting from the 2nd of March. Now that's in PST in the US time zones. We'll come to the details of those races later, but what I wanted to focus in on here is that they're saying we expect to release in approximately 1 month. That could mean a few different times. Firstly, I want to rule out the possibility of the weekend of the 14th of March. I think that's not going to work at all with all the other things that are mentioned in this post. That's particularly because that would mean it comes out just before one of these race events. That would be approximately 1 month, but it doesn't work. The second time that's plausible is the 21st of March. That would be almost exactly 1 month. And I think that's probably the time Granny Games are hoping to release it, but that they're also in a situation where they're just not 100% certain that it will be ready on the 21st of March. And so they want to be ready to say, okay, we've got some slippage. It's going to be the 28th of March. That's why I don't think they're committing to the date in this post. Then, of course, the 28th of March also fits with this approximately 1 month. And then there's a prospect of slippage beyond that to the 4th of April, which I also feel is plausible, but is probably less likely than the other two dates. So at the moment, I think the 21st or 28th of March are the most likely based upon this post, but that we can't rule out the 4th of April. Don't take any time off work yet, but we'll find out more when they give a firm announcement. And normally their pattern is that they give that firm announcement 23 days out from the launch. Now, they're going to be running a couple of events in the interim. The first one is an event over in Path of Exile 1 land. Lots of stuff on the channel about that so far. That's the Legacy of Frisia event. But in Path of Exile 2, they're going to be running something a little bit new. These are going to be races through the first half of the campaign. These are going to be races to kill Doriani in Act 3. Now these races are going to be in solo self-found, so you can't team up with your friends, and also you can't get help from other people funneled up to you. And at the same time, they're going to be playing with a modified version of the softcore rule set. You'll have the normal softcore rule set, so when you die, you'll have the same penalties you'd have in softcore, but there'll be an additional penalty as well, and that is that your character becomes unplayable for 1 minute after you die. So this is something that's intended to reduce just how riskily you can play in certain parts of the game, and to make it so that the winner is probably someone that gets through the campaign deathless, or maybe has 1 or 2 deaths. You're definitely not going to be able to have someone that brute forces an encounter by a really risky strategy that works only 1 time in 5, because that's simply not going to work. Also, these are going to be the first race events that introduce Demigod MTX as prizes. These are something that existed in Path of Exile 1, and with the Demigod items, what they are, they're a cosmetic MTX set. They're actually awarded as genuine items, but they can be converted into an MTX where you can then transfer the look onto a different item instead. They're tradable, and they tend to be very, very valuable in both Path of Exile 1 and Path of Exile 2. Now, the other things to note, this is going to be a fixed layout environment. What this means is that if you're racing in this, if Zizaran's racing in this, if Jungron are racing in this, all 3 of you are going to face exactly the same layout every time you go into a zone. Now this is going to be what's termed a fixed layout environment. This hasn't been run in Path of Exile 2, but it's tech they introduced in Path of Exile 1 to deal with some of the situations where someone can get extremely lucky or extremely unlucky on a particular zone layout. Instead, the layouts will be the same for everyone. Now the intention here is that this will mitigate partially the impact that RNG has. That said, these races will still contain a significant amount of RNG. There'll be things where people will identify a fantastic weapon and it's going to shoot them miles ahead of everyone else, or at the same time, someone might have a lot of trouble getting something to drop, or another player might have a Wanderlust drop and that provides them with a big boost. All these things are going to happen. The shorter a race is, the more decisive that a single lucky drop can be. But ultimately, I do think this is going to be something that you will need to be very, very, very good at Path of Exile 2's early game in order to stand any chance at winning. I know that even if I had stars aligned luck, like I got a really good weapon in Act 1, one that was good enough to do all of Act 2 with, I got a really good weapon during Act 2, perhaps from Jamana at the end of it, that's good enough to do Act 3 with, and on top of that, I had a Wanderlust drop late in Act 1. Even with all of those advantages, I wouldn't be competitive in this because I haven't done the practice necessary in the early game in order to win one of these race events. But among the people who have done that practice, those sorts of drops can be the turning point that take them from being 27th place to instead being first place, or that take them from being 175th place all the way up to 12th place. Additionally, there'll be a ladder so you can spy on the competition, although you will find that spying on the competition is going to be very, very distracting for you and probably not the best idea. All the information you can get from the ladder is the XP count of the top 1,000 players, so that's not necessarily going to tell you how far progressed they are. Now, the process for joining these race events is different to creating a normal character, and I'll put a link down in the description below to Granny Games' announcement because you will want to have a look at this. It is the same as it's been in Path of Exile 1, so if you're familiar with Path of Exile 1 and you've played in some of the race events there, you'll know what to do, but it is not the same as just pressing the Create Character button that you would normally press. They're going to be available to both PC and console with a shared prize pool. Now, when are these events happening? These are going to be happening Sunday in the US and similar time zones, and unfortunately for those of us that are in places like Australia and New Zealand, they're going to be nice and early on a Monday morning. 6 a.m. here, 3 a.m. in Singapore and Perth and similar time zones on a Monday, and this is going to be in the evening if you're in Europe. It's probably a pretty good time overall, but it's not a good time if you're an Australian who's looking to play in these events. What are the prizes, you might be asking? There are going to be cosmetic MTX prizes. These are the Demigod's Virtue unique helmets. These are going to be available either as an equipable item, or you can permanently sacrifice that equipable item in order to get it as a bound to account microtransaction that will change the appearance of other helmets that you wear. These look pretty stunning. They're going to be extremely exclusive. There will not be many of them available. And on top of that, there's also going to be a laptop prize for the third of these events. So this is the Demigod's Virtue details. You can have a read of all of those in the official announcement if you think you're going to be competitive for them. And then there's going to be this laptop, which is going to be based upon a 4070, and that's going to be awarded only in the third of the races, and it's going to be to outright first place. So it's not going to be one for every single class, as will be the case with the Demigod's MTX. Instead, it's just going to be one for outright first in the entire event. Now, I do think you want to have some expectations in mind. If you're currently able to do Doriani under 3.5 hours, then it's a bit more realistic that you can improve to the point that you might end up with a time that could win this event. If you're like me, someone that's not really practiced the super early game, you're probably miles behind, but that doesn't mean it can't be fun to have a go with this. The times, though, are going to be very, very, very fast, especially given that you don't need to go for all the character power upgrades that are permanent that you would get on a normal playthrough. So you might go for the 30 Spirit in Act 3. I don't even think you're going to ascend in Act 2. I don't think that's going to be worth it because of the amount of time that it takes. Maybe someone will prove me wrong on that. And then there's a whole bunch of things that you probably don't do in Act 3. You're certainly not doing the second ascension, that's for sure. The races are free to participate in. Anyone that's got a POE 2 account is welcome to join. Streaming is optional. You're not required to stream this, whereas a number of the community run races do enforce that they must be streamed. Now, there's also one last rule that needs to be said, and that is that character names need to be kept to within a certain level of decency. I'll call this the Jung Rowan rule because of an incident that's happened in the past where someone came up with some rather risque names that were used in order to have a little bit of a laugh during a previous event. And of course, they ended up doing extremely well in that event. And this ended up being a little bit of an embarrassment for Granny Games, even though most of us in the community thought it was hilarious. So you're going to need to keep your character names within reasonable limits. Granny Games don't exactly specify where the line is, but Granny Games definitely don't want people who are either over the line or who are skirting the edges, trying to get around them while still being generally appropriate. They're saying here that that will count as a breach as well. So basically, follow the letter and the spirit of this. Keep it to things that could be said on television at 7 p.m. and you'll be fine. Anyways, that's what we know about Path of Exile 2 today. Bit of information about when we might be able to expect 0.2.0, not a firm release date yet, so don't plan upon it being a firm release date, and some upcoming race events that should be a lot of fun, either to participate in or potentially just to watch, especially if you need a little bit of a break from the Legacy of Frisia event if you're playing in that, or if you want to just dip your feet back into Path of Exile 2 while you're waiting for 0.2.0 to come out. May your Varlorbs have interesting results.